The orbital station called Covenant of Stars hung in the darkness of space like a jewel made of light and metal. It was home to the most prestigious academy in the entire Galactic Union, and thousands of young beings from hundreds of different worlds came here to learn and grow and become the leaders of tomorrow. Marcus Cole stood at the viewport of his small dormitory room and watched the distant stars spin slowly past. He was 19 years old, and he was alone, and he was very far from home. Earth was somewhere out there in the blackness, a tiny blue dot that most species in the galaxy preferred to forget existed. He had been at the academy for 3 months now, and in all that time he had not made a single friend. This did not surprise him. He had read the reports before he came here, and he knew what the other species thought of humans. They called Earth a Class 12 Deathworld, which was almost the highest danger rating a planet could receive. They spoke of his homeworld with a mixture of horror and disbelief, as if they could not understand how anything could survive there, let alone build cities and write poetry and dream of reaching the stars. Marcus turned away from the viewport and picked up his bag. Today was another day of classes, another day of sitting alone at the back of the room while other students whispered and stared. He had learned to make himself small, to move quietly, to speak only when spoken to. It was easier that way. The corridors of the academy were wide and bright, designed to accommodate species of many different sizes and shapes. Marcus walked past a group of Thessians, their long spindly limbs folding and unfolding as they moved. They stopped talking when they saw him and pressed themselves against the wall to let him pass. He pretended not to notice. A Kithmori warrior stood at the intersection ahead, her massive armored body blocking half the hallway. She was twice his height and probably weighed 5 times as much, with claws that could tear through metal. When she saw Marcus approaching, she stepped aside and lowered her eyes. He nodded politely and kept walking. This was his life now. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy treated him like he was something to be avoided. Not because they hated him, but because something deep in their instincts told them to be careful around the small, soft creature from the world of death. Xenobiology 301 was held in a large circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central platform. Marcus arrived early, as he always did, and took his usual seat at the very back. From here he could see everyone, and everyone could pretend they did not see him. The other students filed in over the next few minutes. There were Thessians and Velrani and Kithmori, and a dozen other species he had learned to recognize. They chatted and laughed and shared stories about their weekends, their families, their plans for the future. None of them looked at Marcus. None of them asked about his weekend. Professor Velik arrived precisely on time, her thin body folding gracefully as she took her place at the central platform. She was a Thessian scholar, ancient by human standards but still sharp and curious. Marcus liked her lectures. She treated every species with the same clinical interest, including humans. "Today we begin a new unit," Professor Velik announced, her voice carrying easily through the room. "We will be studying survival stress responses across different planetary classifications. How do bodies react when faced with danger? How have different species evolved to handle the threats of their home environments?" Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He knew where this was going. "We are fortunate," Professor Velik continued, "to have a student among us from a genuine high-classification Deathworld. Perhaps he can offer us some unique perspective on the subject." Every head in the room turned to look at Marcus. He kept his face calm and his hands flat on his desk. This was fine. He had handled worse. "Actually, Professor, I have some perspective to offer." The voice came from the front row, and Marcus did not need to look to know who had spoken. Kethver of the Velrani noble houses rose from his seat with the fluid grace of his species. His skin shimmered with soft bioluminescence, shifting through colors of blue and gold. He was tall and elegant and beautiful in the way that made other species stop and stare. He was also, Marcus had learned over the past 3 months, extraordinarily cruel. "Please, Kethver," Professor Velik said, "if you have something to contribute." Kethver smiled, and the light in his skin pulsed with amusement. He turned to face the class, positioning himself so that everyone could see him and hear him clearly. "I have been studying the human homeworld," he began, his voice smooth and confident. "Earth, they call it, a world of chaos and violence and death. The atmosphere is so thick with oxygen that fires spread uncontrollably. The weather systems spawn massive storms that flatten entire regions. The planet is crawling with predators and parasites and diseases that would kill any civilized being in minutes." He paused for effect, letting his words sink in. "And yet somehow, against all reason and logic, these creatures survived. Not because they are strong or fast or intelligent, but simply because they are too stubborn to die. They have no natural armor, no venom, no telepathy, no bioluminescence. They cannot even see in the dark without artificial assistance. They are, by any objective measure, one of the most poorly designed species in the known galaxy." Nervous laughter rippled through the class. Marcus sat very still. "I wonder sometimes," Kethver continued, turning now to look directly at Marcus, "why the Academy even admitted one of them. Surely it was not based on merit. Perhaps it was curiosity, a desire to study the primitive up close. Or perhaps it was simply charity, a way to make ourselves feel generous by helping the less fortunate." More laughter now, louder and more confident. "Look at him sitting there," Kethver said, gesturing at Marcus. "So quiet, so still. Do you think he even understands what I am saying? I have read that humans communicate primarily through crude vocalizations and facial expressions, like animals. Perhaps complex thought is simply beyond their capabilities." Professor Velik raised a hand. "Kethver, that is quite enough." "I am simply sharing my perspective, Professor. Is that not what you asked for?" Kethver turned back to Marcus, his eyes bright with malice. "Tell me, human, do you even have feelings? Or are you simply a persistence predator running on chemical impulses, too primitive to know when you should feel shame?" The room was silent. Every eye was on Marcus. He took a slow breath and let it out. He had been mocked before. He had been called names and made to feel small and told that he did not belong. But there was something different about this moment, something in the way Kethver was looking at him, like he was studying an insect before crushing it. Marcus looked up and met Kethver's gaze. The Velrani was expecting fear or anger or shame. Instead, he found something he had never seen before. The human's eyes were calm and steady and patient, like a predator that had all the time in the world. "You have clearly never seen," Marcus said quietly. "What happens when humans stop being polite?" Kethver laughed, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his light. He stepped closer, looming over Marcus's desk, trying to reassert his dominance. "What could you possibly do, Deathworlder?" he asked. "Bleed on me." And then, before anyone could stop him, he reached out and shoved Marcus's shoulder. The moment Kethver's hand touched Marcus's shoulder, something changed in the room. It was not visible at first, not something anyone could point to or name, but every creature in that classroom felt it, deep in the ancient parts of their brains that remembered what it was like to be prey. Marcus did not move. He did not flinch or pull away or cry out. He simply sat there, looking up at the Velrani noble with those steady, patient eyes. His expression had not changed at all. If anything, he looked slightly amused, like someone watching a small child throw a tantrum. Kethver kept his hand on Marcus's shoulder, refusing to back down. He was the one in control here. He was the predator, the dominant one, the superior being. The human was nothing, just a fragile creature from a world that should have killed his species long ago. "You see," Kethver said to the class, his voice loud and confident. "He does nothing. He cannot do anything. This is the great terror of the Deathworld, sitting here like a frightened." He stopped. His bioluminescent skin flickered once, twice, 3 times. The colors that usually flowed so smoothly across his body began to pulse in uneven patterns, like a heartbeat that had lost its rhythm. Kethver, one of his friends, called from the front row. "Are you all right?" The Velrani noble did not answer. He was staring at his hand, the one that was still touching Marcus's shoulder. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. He could feel it in his cells, in his blood, in the delicate chemical receptors that covered his skin. His body was screaming at him to run, to flee, to get away from this creature as fast as he possibly could. But why? The human had not done anything. He was just sitting there. Kethver pulled his hand back and stumbled away from Marcus's desk. His breathing was coming faster now, sharp and shallow. His species communicated through pheromones and bioelectric fields, and right now both of those systems were overloading with signals he could not understand. The human was broadcasting something, pumping out invisible chemicals that were flooding into Kethver's system and setting off alarms he did not even know he had. "I feel strange," Kethver said, his voice suddenly weak. "I feel." And then the medical alarms began to scream. Every classroom in the academy was equipped with ambient health monitors. They were standard safety features, designed to detect medical emergencies before they became fatal. These monitors tracked the vital signs of every being in the room, watching for signs of distress or injury or illness. Right now, every single monitor in the classroom was flashing red. "Critical stress response DETECTAD," the automated voice announced, cutting through the chaos. "Chemical contamination warning. Emergency PROTOCOLS engaged. All STUDENTS please remain calm and move to the DESIGNATED safety zones." Kethver dropped to his knees. His bioluminescence was going haywire now, flashing through colors that his species only produced during extreme panic. He was clawing at his own skin, trying to scrape away something invisible, something that was seeping into his body through every pore. "It burns," he screamed. "What did you do to me? What did you do?" Marcus still had not moved. He sat at his desk with his hands folded in front of him, watching the scene with what might have been concern or might have been curiosity. His heart rate, now displayed on the emergency biometrics panel at the front of the room, was exactly 62 beats per minute. It had not changed at all since the beginning of class. The other students were panicking now. They scrambled over each other in their rush to get away from the human, pressing themselves against the walls, crowding toward the exits. A Theshan knocked over a desk in her haste to flee. A Kethmari warrior, one of the most fearsome predators in the galaxy, was whimpering as she tried to squeeze her massive body through a door designed for smaller species. Professor Velik was shouting into her communicator, calling for medical assistance, her thin voice barely audible over the screaming alarms. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the device. Kethver had collapsed completely now. He lay on the floor in front of Marcus's desk, his body convulsing, his light flickering like a dying star. Foam was beginning to form at the corners of his mouth. His eyes had rolled back in his head, showing only white. "Help me," someone was screaming. "Someone help him." But no one would go near him. No one would go near Marcus. The entire class was pressed against the far wall of the room, as far from the human as they could possibly get. They watched in horror as their classmate writhed and shook and slowly stopped moving. The medical team arrived 4 minutes later. 4 minutes that felt like 4 hours. A Theshan doctor burst through the door with 2 synthetic medical assistants behind her. She took one look at the scene and immediately began issuing orders. "Get him on the stretcher. Full toxicology scan. I need antihistamines and neural stabilizers now." The synthetic assistants lifted Kethver's limp body onto a floating stretcher. The doctor ran her scanner over him, her face growing more and more grim with each reading. She looked up at the class, at the terrified students huddled against the wall, and then her eyes found Marcus. He was still sitting at his desk. He had not moved at all. His heart rate was now 64 beats per minute, a slight increase that the monitors attributed to mild concern. "You," the doctor said. "Human, what happened here?" Marcus blinked. "He touched me." He touched you, that is all. That is all. The doctor stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned back to her patient and continued working. The synthetic assistants were pumping chemicals into Kethver's body, trying to stabilize his vital signs, trying to undo whatever damage had been done. "Will he be all right?" Professor Velik asked, her voice trembling. The doctor did not answer right away. She was studying her scanner, scrolling through data, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that looked very much like fear. "He is experiencing acute systemic shock," she finally said. "His body is reacting to foreign biochemical agents as if they were deadly poison. His immune system is attacking itself. His neural pathways are overloaded with stress signals." "But what caused it?" Professor Velik demanded. "What could possibly?" The doctor looked at Marcus again. She looked at the biometrics panel, at his steady heartbeat, at his calm breathing, at every indicator that showed a being completely at rest. "He did," she said quietly. "The human did this. Not by attacking, not by doing anything at all. He simply existed near Kethver and his body did the rest." The room went silent. Even the medical alarms seemed to quiet, as if they too were waiting for an explanation. Marcus looked around at the terrified faces of his classmates. He saw the way they pressed against the walls, the way they refused to meet his eyes, the way they trembled when he so much as shifted in his seat. He had seen this before, this fear, this horror. He had seen it his whole life. But he had never understood it until now. "I did not mean to hurt him," Marcus said, and his voice was soft and sad. "I never meant to hurt anyone." No one answered. No one moved. They just stared at him, this small soft creature from the world of death, and they wondered how they had ever thought he was harmless. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines and the gentle hum of life support systems. Kethver lay on a bed in the center of the room, his body covered in monitoring patches that tracked every function of his damaged system. His bioluminescence had faded to a pale, sickly gray, barely visible beneath his skin. Dr. Thesson stood beside his bed, reviewing the data on her tablet with an expression of grim fascination. She had been a physician for over 200 years, had treated patients from every corner of the galaxy, had seen diseases and injuries that would make most beings faint. But she had never seen anything quite like this. The door opened, and Professor Velik entered with the Academy's dean close behind her. Dean Korath was a massive Kethmari, her armored body barely fitting through the doorframe, but she moved with surprising grace for a creature of her size. Her eyes were sharp and worried as she surveyed the scene. "How is he?" Dean Korath asked. "Stable now," Dr. Thesson replied. "But it was close. If the medical team had arrived even a few minutes later, we might have lost him." "And you are certain about the cause?" The doctor nodded slowly. "I have run every test 3 times. There is no doubt. The human's biochemistry caused this reaction." Professor Velik made a sound of distress. "But that is impossible. The human did nothing aggressive. He simply sat there." "That is precisely the problem," Dr. Thesson said. She pulled up a holographic display that showed a complex web of chemical compounds. When the human was mocked and confronted, his body responded the way human bodies always respond to perceived threats. It released a cascade of stress hormones and defensive chemicals through his skin as microperspiration. "You mean he was sweating?" Dean Korath asked. "Essentially, yes. But human sweat is not like the perspiration of other species. It contains hundreds of different compounds, many of which are actively toxic to beings with sensitive biochemistry. Adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine, and dozens of other chemicals that most species only produce in trace amounts. Humans produce them constantly, and when stressed, they produce them in quantities that would be considered lethal doses for many galactic species." The holographic display shifted, showing a simulation of what had happened in the classroom. A small human figure sat at a desk, while waves of invisible chemicals radiated outward from his body. When another figure touched him, those chemicals surged, and the second figure immediately began showing signs of distress. Kethver's species communicates through pheromones and bioelectric fields, Dr. Thesson continued. Their skin is covered in extremely sensitive chemical receptors. When he touched the human, those receptors were flooded with compounds they were never designed to process. His body interpreted the chemicals as a massive toxin attack and responded accordingly. But the human was not even angry, Professor Velik protested. His heart rate never changed. The monitors showed him completely calm. That is the most terrifying part, the doctor said quietly. He was not calm. By human standards, he was mildly annoyed. His body was responding to what he perceived as a minor social confrontation, not a serious threat. This, she gestured at Kethver's unconscious form, was caused by a human who was barely irritated. Imagine what would happen if one of them was actually angry. Imagine what would happen if one of them was afraid for their life. The room fell silent as everyone considered that possibility. Dean Koreth moved closer to the holographic display, studying the chemical compounds with her sharp predator's eyes. You are saying that humans are walking chemical weapons. I am saying that humans evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them, Dr. Thesson replied. Their biology developed accordingly. Their immune systems are aggressive beyond anything we have encountered. Their stress responses are designed to prepare them for combat against predators that would make a Kethmori warrior look like a house pet. They carry diseases in their bodies that they are immune to, but that would devastate other species. Even their saliva contains enzymes that break down organic matter. She pulled up another display, this one showing the human biometrics from the classroom incident. Look at this. Throughout the entire confrontation, the human's hindbrain never registered Kethver as a threat. His fight-or-flight response was not triggered because his body did not consider a 7-foot Velrani noble to be dangerous. He was annoyed, yes. Uncomfortable, certainly. But afraid, not even slightly. Professor Velik sank into a chair, her thin limbs trembling. All this time, we have been avoiding him because he made us uneasy. We thought we were being cautious, but we were not cautious enough. We should have known better. We should have protected our students. No one could have predicted this, Dean Koreth said firmly. Humans have been isolated from galactic society for nearly a century. The last time one attended this academy, safety protocols were very different. We simply did not have the data to anticipate this kind of incident. What do we do now? Professor Velik asked. Do we send him home? Do we expel him? On what grounds? The dean replied. He broke no rules. He committed no violence. His body simply reacted to stimuli in the only way it knows how. Expelling him for existing would be a violation of every principle this academy stands for. Dr. Thesson cleared her throat. There is something else you should know. I reviewed the human's complete medical file, and I found something interesting. Before he came to the academy, he underwent extensive treatment to suppress his more dangerous biological functions. He takes medication every day to reduce his chemical output, to slow his immune responses, to make himself safer for other species to be around. And it was not enough, Dean Koreth asked. It reduced his output by approximately 60%. Without the medication, the incident in the classroom would have been much worse. Kethver would almost certainly be dead. The silence that followed was heavy and cold. So even when humans try to be safe, Professor Velik said slowly, they are still deadly. They are beings from a Class 12 Deathworld, Dr. Thesson replied. They evolved to survive conditions that would annihilate any other known species. Their bodies are weapons because they had to be. It is not malice. It is simply what they are. Dean Koreth stood still for a long moment, her massive form casting a shadow across the medical bay. Finally, she spoke. I will speak with the human myself. We need new protocols, new safety measures, but we will not send him away. He came here to learn, and he will have that opportunity. We will simply need to find ways to keep everyone safe while he does so. The other students will be terrified of him now, Professor Velik said. Perhaps that is not entirely a bad thing, the dean replied. Perhaps a little fear will teach them to be more respectful. Kethver mocked and bullied that human for months, and no one stopped him. Perhaps if they had shown more kindness, none of this would have happened. She turned and walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at the unconscious Velrani noble. When he wakes up, she said, tell him that his family has been informed, and tell him that I hope he has learned something from this experience. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, but it is also full of dangers. The greatest danger is not always the one that looks most threatening. Sometimes, the greatest danger is the quiet one sitting in the back of the room, waiting to see if anyone will treat them with kindness. And with that, she left. 3 days passed after the incident in the classroom. 3 days of whispers and stares and doors closing quickly whenever Marcus walked down a corridor. 3 days of eating alone in the corner of the cafeteria while other students watched him from across the room. 3 days of wondering if he had made a terrible mistake by coming here. Dean Koreth had called him to her office on the first day and explained the situation with calm professionalism. She told him about the new safety protocols, about the designated zones where he would need to wear a special suit that contained his biochemical output, about the medical team that would now monitor his stress levels around the clock. She told him that he was not in trouble, that he had done nothing wrong, that the academy still wanted him here. But Marcus could see the fear in her eyes, even as she said the words. Even the dean of the academy, a Kethmari warrior who had fought in 3 interstellar conflicts, was afraid of him. He did not blame her. He would have been afraid too. The news of what had happened spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Within hours, everyone knew. The human had nearly killed a Velrani noble without lifting a finger. The human was a walking weapon, a biological hazard, a creature so dangerous that even his sweat was poison. Stories grew and changed as they traveled, becoming more dramatic with each telling. By the end of the first day, some students were saying that Marcus had deliberately attacked Kethver, that he had unleashed some kind of chemical weapon, that he was a spy sent by Earth to assassinate galactic leaders. Marcus heard the rumors and said nothing. What could he say? The truth was almost as terrifying as the lies. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. Marcus was sitting alone at his usual table in the cafeteria, picking at his food without much appetite. The dining hall was crowded with students from dozens of different species, but there was a wide, empty space around him, a bubble of fear that no one dared to enter. Then a shadow fell across his table, and he looked up to find a Kethmari warrior standing over him. She was massive, easily 8 feet tall, with thick armored plates covering her body and claws that could tear through steel. Her name was Thara, and Marcus knew her from his advanced combat theory class. She was one of the best fighters in the academy, a being designed by evolution to be a perfect predator. And she was looking at Marcus with something that was not fear. "May I sit?" she asked. Marcus blinked in surprise. "You want to sit with me?" "I do. Are you not afraid?" Thara made a sound that might have been a laugh. "I am terrified, but I have spent my whole life being the thing that others fear. I know what it is like to walk into a room and watch everyone move away. I know what it is like to be treated as a monster simply because of what I am." She pulled out a chair and sat down across from Marcus, her massive body making the furniture look like toys. "You did not hurt Kethver on purpose," she said. "Anyone who watched the recording can see that. You sat there and took his insults without fighting back. You did not even raise your voice. And then, when he attacked you, your body simply defended itself. That is not how most people see it." "Most people are fools," Thara replied bluntly. "They see a human and they think of all the stories they have heard about Earth, about the wars and the violence and the death. They do not see you. They see their own fear reflected back at them. Marcus did not know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like this before, had ever looked past the label of Deathworlder to see the person underneath. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Thara was quiet for a moment. "When I was young, my clan sent me to a training camp on a world called Verath. I was the only Kethmari there. The other species were terrified of me. They thought I would eat them in their sleep, that I would lose control and tear them apart. For 3 years, no one would speak to me, no one would train with me, no one would treat me as anything other than a monster." She leaned forward, her eyes meeting Marcus's. "And then one day, a small Theshan walked up to me in the middle of the training yard and asked if I wanted to play a game. She was not afraid, or if she was, she did not let it stop her. She became my first friend and eventually my best friend. She died in the Vorthan conflict 20 years ago, but I have never forgotten what she taught me." "What did she teach you?" "That the greatest courage is not fighting enemies. The greatest courage is choosing kindness when everyone expects cruelty." Thara reached across the table and placed something in front of Marcus. It was a small metal disc, engraved with symbols he did not recognize. "This is a friendship token of my clan," she explained. "It means that I consider you worthy of trust, worthy of respect. Anyone who sees this will know that you have a friend among the Kethmari." Marcus picked up the disc and held it carefully. It was warm from being pressed against Thara's armor and heavier than it looked. "I do not know what to say." "You do not need to say anything. Just know that you are not alone. There are others who see you for what you are, not what they have been told to fear." Over the next few days, Marcus began to notice changes. It started small, just a few students nodding to him in the hallways instead of running away. Then a Theshan researcher named Dr. Velik, a cousin of Professor Velik, approached him and asked if she could study his stress responses for a paper she was writing. She was nervous and kept a safe distance, but she looked at him with fascination rather than horror. Then there was Corin, a young Velrani from a minor house, who sat next to Marcus in his History of Interstellar Relations class and asked to borrow a data stylus. He did not mention the incident with Kethver, did not ask about the rumors, did not treat Marcus like a ticking bomb. He just needed a stylus, and Marcus was the closest person who had one. It was such a small thing, such an ordinary interaction, but it meant more to Marcus than he could express. Not everyone changed, of course. There were still students who crossed the street when they saw him coming, still professors who watched him with wary eyes, still whispers that stopped whenever he entered a room. But the bubble of fear around him was shrinking, slowly but steadily, as more and more beings chose to see him as a person rather than a threat. One evening, Marcus sat in his dormitory room and looked at the friendship token Thara had given him. He thought about Earth, about his family, about all the people who had told him that coming to the academy was a mistake. He thought about the fear and the loneliness and the constant weight of being different. And for the first time since the incident, he smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real. Maybe he did not have to be alone. Maybe he could find a place in this strange galaxy, among these alien beings who were slowly learning to see past their fear. Maybe there was hope after all. Outside his window, the stars continued their endless dance, and somewhere among them, Earth spun quietly through the void, waiting for its wayward son to find his place among the stars. 2 weeks after the incident, Kethver was released from the medical bay. He was thinner than before, his bioluminescence dimmed and uncertain, his movements lacking their usual confident grace. The doctors said he would make a full recovery, but it would take time. The chemical sensitivity would linger for months, and there were certain foods and environments he would need to avoid. His family had filed a formal complaint against the Academy, demanding that Marcus be expelled and barred from all Galactic Union institutions. But the Academy's legal team had reviewed the case and found no grounds for punishment. Marcus had done nothing. His biology had simply reacted to stimuli, and no being could be punished for the involuntary functions of their own body. The complaint was quietly withdrawn when Kethver's father realized that pursuing it would only bring more attention to his son's humiliation. Marcus heard about all of this through the Academy's rumor network, but he did not seek out Kethver, did not try to apologize or explain. What would be the point? The Velrani noble hated him, and nothing Marcus could say would change that. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. It happened in the observation deck, a large curved room with windows that looked out onto the endless expanse of space. Marcus came here sometimes in the evenings, when the deck was empty and quiet, to watch the stars and think about home. Tonight, however, he was not alone. Kethver stood by the central window, his dim light reflecting off the glass. He turned when he heard Marcus enter, and for a long moment they simply stared at each other. "I should leave," Marcus said, already taking a step backward. "Wait." The word was quiet, almost desperate. Marcus stopped. Kethver moved toward him slowly, keeping a careful distance. His skin flickered through colors of blue and silver, emotions Marcus could not read. When he spoke, his voice was different from before, stripped of its arrogance and cruelty. "I have been thinking," he said. "For 2 weeks I have had nothing to do but think. About what happened, about what I said to you, about all the things I believed were true." Marcus said nothing. He waited. "I told myself that I was superior to you," Kethver continued. "I told myself that you were primitive, that you were nothing, that your species was an accident of evolution that somehow survived when it should have died. I believed these things because everyone I knew believed them, because my family and my teachers and my culture all told me they were true." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And then you proved me wrong. Not by fighting me, not by attacking me, but simply by sitting there. Simply by existing. Your body did something that the greatest warriors of my world could never do. It defeated me without trying, without even caring enough to try." "I did not want to hurt you," Marcus said. "I know, that is what makes it worse." Kethver's light pulsed with shame. "You had every reason to hate me. I mocked you for months, humiliated you in front of our classmates, made your life miserable in ways large and small. And when I finally pushed too far, when I attacked you, you did nothing. You could have fought back. I have read about human soldiers, about the things your kind can do when they are truly angry. You could have killed me without breaking a sweat, but you did not even try. You just sat there and let your body do what it does naturally." He moved closer, close enough that Marcus could see the faint tremor in his hands. "Do you know what I felt when I touched you?" Kethver asked. "Before the pain, before the terror, there was a moment when my senses brushed against yours. My species can feel the emotions of others through chemical signals, and in that moment I felt what you were feeling." "What did you feel?" "Sadness," Kethver whispered. "Loneliness. A desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would see you as more than a monster. You sat there while I insulted everything about you, and all you wanted was for someone to be kind." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He had not known that Kethver's species could sense emotions. He had not realized that his innermost feelings had been laid bare in that moment of contact. "I am not here to ask for forgiveness," Kethver said. "I do not deserve it, and I would not believe you if you gave it. I am here because I needed you to know that I was wrong. About you, about your species, about everything. What I thought was weakness was actually strength. What I thought was primitive was actually evolved beyond anything I could comprehend. You come from a world that makes my nightmares look like pleasant dreams, and instead of becoming a monster, you became someone who just wants to be kind." He stepped back and bowed his head, a gesture of respect that Marcus had never seen a Velrani make to anyone outside their own species. "I will not bother you again," Kethver said. "I will tell my family that you are not our enemy, and if anyone asks me about humans, I will tell them the truth, that they are the most terrifying and the most gentle beings in the galaxy, and that we should be grateful they choose to use their power for creation rather than destruction. He turned and walked away, leaving Marcus alone with the stars. For a long time, Marcus stood there in the darkness, thinking about what had just happened. He thought about Earth, about his family, about the long road that had brought him to this place. He thought about the fear he had faced and the friends he had found, and the future that stretched out before him like an ocean of possibilities. A sound at the door made him turn. A young Velrani girl stood at the entrance, her light shifting through nervous patterns of green and gold. She was smaller than Kethver, younger, with delicate features and wide, curious eyes. "Excuse me," she said, "are you the human Marcus Cole?" "I am." She took a deep breath and stepped into the room. "I am Lysara. Kethver is my cousin. He told me to find you to ask you something." Marcus felt a flicker of wariness. "What do you want to ask?" Lysara moved closer, close enough that Marcus could see the wonder in her eyes. There was no fear there, only curiosity, only the bright burning desire to understand. "What does it feel like?" she asked. "Living on a world that is trying to kill you every moment, growing up surrounded by danger, by predators, by storms and earthquakes and 1,000 ways to die. How do you survive it? How do you wake up every morning knowing that your planet wants you dead?" Marcus considered the question carefully. He thought about the forests of Earth, the mountains and the oceans and the endless sky. He thought about summer storms and winter cold, about wolves howling in the night and sharks circling in the deep. He thought about the million ways his world could kill him and the billion reasons he loved it anyway. He smiled, and for once he did not try to hide it. Let them see his teeth, his human teeth, the teeth of an apex predator from a world of death. Let them understand what it meant to be human, not through fear but through joy. "Feels like home," he said. Lysara stared at him for a long moment, her light shifting through colors of amazement and something that might have been respect. Then she smiled too, a small hesitant expression, and Marcus realized that maybe, just maybe, he had found another friend. Outside the windows, the stars burned cold and eternal, and somewhere among them, Earth continued its endless dance around a yellow sun. It was a world of death, a world of chaos, a world that should have killed everything that lived on it. But it had not. Instead, it had created something remarkable, something that could survive anything and still choose kindness, still reach for the stars, still smile in the face of a universe that did not understand. The medical monitoring system noted Marcus's elevated heart rate and flagged it for review. Later, when the doctors examined the data, they would see the chemical markers of happiness flooding his system. They would note that even joy, it seemed, was a weapon when you came from Earth. But for now, Marcus just stood in the starlight with a new friend at his side. And for the first time since he had left home, he felt like he truly belonged.